Section 1. The Slow Decline. At 72, George had learned to accept certain aches and limitations as normal. He was still active on most days. But lately, something had shifted. What began as small signs forgetting where he placed his keys, needing to rest halfway through gardening, slowly crept into every part of his routine. Mornings became a struggle. He'd sit on the edge of the bed, staring blankly, waiting for his joints to cooperate. His once brisk morning walks were now replaced with sluggish movements and stiffness. Even his thoughts felt heavier, as if wrapped in fog. Conversations required more effort, and names he once recalled easily danced just out of reach. At first, George dismissed the changes. "It's just aging," he told himself, but the signs kept piling up. He began skipping social events, too tired to engage. His granddaughter, during a quiet Sunday visit, gently asked, "Grandpa, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself lately." Her concern echoed in his mind. For days. Statistics show that over 34% of adults over 65 report chronic fatigue that interferes with daily life, yet many, like George, don't pursue further evaluation. They blame aging and accept the decline. George, however, was starting to doubt whether this was truly inevitable. One particular morning, as he fumbled with his medication box and dropped a glass of water he couldn't grip tightly enough, something inside him shifted. It was no longer about comfort, it was about fear. What if? This gets worse, he thought. That moment marked the beginning not of a further decline, but of a search for answers. If you've ever felt like George, tired without knowing why, you're not alone. If this story resonates so far, leave a comment, give it a like, and subscribe to hear more real journeys like this. You matter. And your story matters too. Section 2. A Visit to Remember. A few days after the water glass incident, George called his doctor. Dr. Susan Bennett had been his physician for over a decade, trusted, direct, and known for never sugarcoating the truth. When he arrived for his appointment, she greeted him with a warm smile but concerned eyes. They sat together as George described his symptoms: fatigue, joint stiffness, memory fuzziness, and a nagging feeling that something was off. Dr. Bennett listened intently, taking notes, then gently asked him to walk her through his daily routine. He spoke about his mornings, his afternoon naps, and his increasingly withdrawn evenings. But one detail caught Dr. Bennett's attention: George's habit of watching television or scrolling on his tablet in bed. Often until midnight or later, she leaned forward. "George, sleep isn't just about getting rest, it's the body's reset button. And what you're doing may be keeping that reset from happening." She explained that exposure to blue light before bed suppresses melatonin production, the hormone that signals the body it's time to sleep. Studies show that seniors who are regularly exposed to screens at night experience a 23% greater risk of cognitive decline and increased physical fatigue. George blinked. "I just thought I was winding down," he said quietly. "I know," she said kindly, "but the body doesn't see it that way. Especially at your age, even small habits have big consequences." George left the office that day, not scared, but curious and a little hopeful. If a habit was quietly dragging him down, maybe changing it could lift him back up. Section 3. Facing the Truth. That night, George sat in bed holding his tablet, unsure. Years of habit tugged at him. He was used to winding down with the screen's soft glow. But Dr. Bennett's words echoed. Even small habits have big consequences. He turned the tablet off, placed it on the nightstand, and sat still. The quiet was uncomfortable. The urge to check the news or scroll through photos itched at his fingertips. But George resisted. The next morning, he felt different. He hadn't slept perfectly, but the fog wasn't as thick. His thoughts moved a bit faster. His legs felt slightly less heavy when getting out of bed. Was it coincidence? Curious, George began researching. He discovered that approximately 28% of older adults experienced disrupted sleep due to late-night screen exposure. Studies revealed that even 30 minutes of blue light before bed can suppress melatonin and delay deep sleep cycles. He was fascinated and increasingly determined. For the next week, George kept a small notebook by his bed. Each night, he logged how he felt before sleep and how rested he felt in the morning. Patterns emerged. Less screen time meant better mornings. Still, he questioned, can something this small really make that big of a difference? He wrote down his thoughts, noting each small win. His memory felt clearer. He didn't reach for coffee quite as desperately. His granddaughter even remarked, "You look brighter this morning, Grandpa." A shift was happening. And for the first time in years, George felt in control of it. Have you ever changed one small habit that made a surprising difference in your life? Share it in the comments. We might feature your story in a future video. Section 4. Making the Shift. George fully committed. He moved his tablet to a drawer in the hallway and replaced his knitstand essentials with a book and a notepad. The first few nights were awkward. He'd reach out instinctively, only to find paper instead of a screen. But within days, a subtle calm replaced the late-night digital buzz. He began a new routine: warm herbal tea, soft instrumental music, and a few pages of reading. Sometimes he jotted reflections, things he was grateful for, questions he hoped sleep would answer. It was simple, but it gave him something screens never had: peace. Within 2 weeks, George was falling asleep faster and waking up less. He noticed his mornings weren't just better, they were clearer. He could remember what he needed to do without rereading his lists. His body felt lighter and his mood more steady. Dr. Bennett had told him that improved sleep could reduce inflammation, enhance memory, and even stabilize blood pressure. George, always a bit skeptical of health advice, now found himself a believer. He began walking again in the mornings, breathing deeper, taking time with breakfast. He felt like he was reintroducing himself to his own life. Each small improvement felt like a personal victory. One evening, his daughter called and asked, "Dad, are you doing something different? You sound happier." George smiled. He wasn't doing more, he was doing less more mindfully. And that made all the difference. Section 5. Rediscovering Energy. George hadn't realized how depleted he'd become until energy returned to his days like sunlight breaking through clouds. He started waking up feeling rested, truly rested for the first time in years. That morning heaviness, the dragging of limbs, the silent dread of the day ahead, it all began to ease. He found himself standing taller, stretching more often, humming while making breakfast. His balance improved. Once hesitant on stairs, he now climbed them with greater ease. A walk to the mailbox no longer felt like a chore, and the garden he once abandoned started calling to him again. One afternoon, he spent nearly an hour pulling weeds, pruning roses, and chatting with a neighbor over the fence. It felt like coming home to a part of himself long buried under fatigue. He later sat in the sun, dirt on his hands, a smile on his face, amazed at how small changes had brought him back to this. His granddaughter noticed first. "Grandpa, you're glowing." "Today," she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around him. George laughed a real, hearty laugh that hadn't come so easily in years. He was doing more, but feeling less burdened. The effort was no longer exhausting, it was empowering. Dr. Bennett had mentioned that improved sleep could reduce inflammation and enhance physical recovery. A study she referenced showed that older adults who improved sleep quality experienced a 31% reduction in joint pain and a 26% increase in energy levels over 3 months. George didn't need the numbers to believe it anymore. He was living proof. Grocery bags felt lighter. Conversations flowed easier. His appetite returned. And with every small victory, his confidence grew. One morning, he looked at his reflection and didn't see someone fading. He saw someone returning. Someone fighting for his vitality and finally winning. Have you ever felt like you were getting your energy back after years of feeling tired? Let us know in the comments. And if this part of George's journey inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Section 6. Reflections and Realizations. 3 months after his initial visit, George returned to Dr. Bennett's office. He walked in taller, smiling with a quiet confidence. The difference was palpable. As they exchanged greetings, Dr. Bennett flipped through his recent records and smiled. "You've done more than just improve your sleep," she said, tapping his chart. "Your blood pressure is lower, your weight's more stable, and your energy markers are up. But what impresses me most is your commitment," George nodded. "I didn't think something so small could change so much." "That's the trap," she replied warmly. "We overlook little habits because they feel harmless. But at your age, they can shape everything from inflammation and mental sharpness to emotional resilience. The body's more sensitive, yes, but also more responsive." George had felt those changes. He no longer snapped at small inconveniences or forgot what he was doing halfway through a task. He was calmer, clearer, and more patient. His journal entries, once laced with frustration, had become filled with gratitude. He started reading books again, something he had quietly given up on when his concentration slipped. He rejoined his community group, sharing stories and laughter without the weight of exhaustion hanging over him. He began planning small trips, something he hadn't felt excited about in years. Statistics flashed back in his mind. 28% fewer mood fluctuations, 24% better memory recall, 31% reduction in joint pain. They weren't just numbers now, they were real lived experiences. And perhaps most importantly, George realized he wasn't too old to change. In fact, the decision to change at 72 had given him more years worth living fully. Section 7. A Message of Hope. George didn't plan to become an advocate for change, he just wanted to feel better. But once his energy, clarity, and emotional strength returned, he felt a responsibility to speak up. Too many of his friends and neighbors were quietly struggling, dismissing their fatigue and fog as just getting older. He began sharing his journey at local community events, always starting the same way. "I didn't think it mattered. I thought I was just tired." The room would grow quiet as he described how one seemingly small change, turning off screens before bed, had restored vitality he thought he'd lost forever. His message resonated. People asked questions, shared stories, and tried the same adjustment. And like George, many of them found that their mornings grew easier, their minds clearer, and their spirits lifted. In a quiet moment after one gathering, a woman in her 80s approached George with tears in her eyes. "I thought I was fading," she said, "but maybe I'm just out of sync. Thank you for helping me see that." George smiled, deeply moved. "You're not fading," he said softly. "You're just waiting for the right rhythm again." His story became more than personal, it became communal. A reminder that we're never too old to grow, adapt, and feel alive again. And that sometimes the most profound transformations begin with the smallest decisions. So if you've watched this far, maybe there's a habit in your life worth revisiting, a small change you've been putting off. Because if George's story teaches us anything, it's this: it's never too late to start over, and every day is a new chance to feel better. If George's story moved you, there's more to discover. Watch 6 morning habits that are aging you faster without you knowing. It might reveal even more hidden habits quietly impacting your health. And remember, you're not alone. We're a community that believes in second chances, fresh starts, and growing stronger with every story. If this journey resonated with you, subscribe, like, and share, because we're all in this together.